Okay, we got 17 people here. It's good enough for me to get started. I'm going to use this time to just go through Blackboard, and I'm also going to be going through Google Sheets and Google Docs, kind of describing these two programs for you guys. Let me turn something off. So I'm going to be going over Google Sheets and Google Docs because I'm going to be asking you guys to use these. I'm just getting an email that someone still can't get in. They said the password. And they tried the password being physics with a capital P. The password physics worked for everyone else, right? Okay, yeah. I don't know why it's not letting them in the meeting then. Jocelyn, can you tell me who it is that is not able to get into the meeting? And I got another email. I'm sorry, everyone. Okay, let's see if... Can you ask that person, Jocelyn, to send me an email really quick and I can try and work it out? No. Oh, okay. That person had an issue because they didn't capitalize P. I'm just going to get started on some of the basics of Blackboard, and if I get an email, I will respond to it. Jocelyn, if you want to just make sure that they know it's a capital P in physics, because case matters, it's case sensitive. Otherwise, I don't know why the password wouldn't be working. All right. So going on with what I have planned today, I just want to go through Blackboard, Google Sheets, and Google Docs. These are all programs that you'll be needing to use throughout the semester. Any program that I ask you guys to use this semester will be freely available to you online. And I just got an email again. It is... Okay. Hopefully they'll be able to get in. All right, so any programs that I ask you guys to use this semester is going to be free and available to you guys either online or available to you guys online or through Blackboard or something like that. So you guys won't need to actually purchase anything for this lab. Starting with Blackboard, the important things that you guys will want to pay attention to are groups, and groups is where you will be able to find your lab group, and we'll go over how we're going to assign lab groups in a moment. Discussions, and I don't know yet if I'm going to do discussion boards or not. I haven't made that decision quite yet, but we might be using discussion boards for your group so that you guys can communicate with each other. Email my instructor. It's not letting me do it right now because I'm in a student preview mode and it doesn't really have a student ID associated with it. But when you guys click email my instructor, it will take you to a dialog box where you can type out and draft an email right in Blackboard, and it'll send it directly to me. The syllabus just takes you to a copy of the syllabus for you guys to go through. And if you click right here, it opens it up as a PDF in Blackboard. And it goes through all of the important information for this class, starting with my information. So my name, my email. Why is that open? My name, my email. It has, for the lecture, it just says see Blackboard for the Zoom link, and I'll make sure the Zoom links are fixed in the future. I don't know why the password part of it's not working, but I'll create a new link for the Zoom meeting and maybe that'll work. And then the student support hours is just time for you guys to contact me one-on-one outside of the class. So if you guys ever have a time where you guys want to start a Zoom meeting and talk with me, with either you or your lab group as a whole, you can just contact me and we'll make an appointment that we can meet during. And it'll be over Zoom that we can meet. The textbook, all of the important lab information will be posted on Blackboard for you guys weekly. So every week you'll see a new thing in the experiment modules part of the Blackboard page that'll be popping up, and it'll have all of the information you guys need. So Blackboard is kind of acting as your lab manual for this semester. Here's how your grade will be broken down. Participation, and I'll get into how I grade participation in a little bit, but that's 10% of your grade. So it's important to actually come to class and participate in your role for the lab, and that'll give you 10%. It's an easy 10% to get as long as you actually show that you're participating and you're part of the group. Lab notebook is a group document that you guys will be using to outline each week's lab. So you will use your lab notebook to take detailed notes of your lab and your experiment, keep track of any data that you guys take. You guys will use your lab notebook and answer all of the questions that you're given in the lab in your lab notebook. So this is a group document, and I'm going to ask you guys to use Google Docs for this group document. So that way everyone can have access and edit the same lab notebook. You don't have to worry about having 4 different files for each group member. It's just one file that's saved on Google's cloud storage. Lab assignments are going to be the individual things that I ask you guys to do. So lab notebook is group work. Lab assignments are individual work. And it's usually going to be pretty quick and easy things for you guys to do. It's not going to be anything particularly difficult that I ask you to do on your own. It's just stuff that I'm asking you to do by yourself instead of as a group. Final presentation at the end of the semester, you and your group are going to go through an experiment of your own design, and you guys are going to complete that experiment, and you're going to make a video presentation kind of outlining what it is you did and what conclusions you can draw from your experiment. And when we get closer to the end of the semester, I'll give you guys a lot more detail on what I'm asking you guys to do here. But just be aware, at the end of the semester, you're going to be asked to create a video and post it on YouTube for me to take a look at and to grade. Here's the grading scale, so you know what percentage corresponds to what letter grade. You can see the C's have been shifted down a little bit, so it's not your normal grading scale. A 65% will give you a C- in this class. Anything less than a 50 will still give you an F though. So be careful with your grades and be sure to stay on top of everything that's going on. So some university policies is just the standard stuff that we include in all of our syllabi across the university. As far as this class specifically goes, the important attendance policy is that if you miss 2 weeks of lab or more, so you fail to perform 2 or more of the experiments, then you will automatically receive an F in the course. So it's important to stay on top of your work and make sure everything gets done in a timely manner so that way you guys won't miss any work. Here's a brief outline of what we're going to do. This is just a tentative schedule though, meant to give you an idea of what we're doing week to week. It may change throughout the semester. I might alter it a little bit here and there, but as long as you guys keep track of the Blackboard experiment modules, you'll see a new one pop up each week, and that's easy enough to make sure you're staying on track. As I do make changes to the schedule, I'll send out announcements letting you know what changes I am making. As far as participation points go, I want you guys this semester to split your groups of 3 or 4 into these roles as leader, recorder, timekeeper, and helper. And we're doing this to give you an idea of the different responsibilities and the different skills that you'll need to succeed in a lab setting in the real world. So the different roles are first leader, and leader is just meant to make sure everyone is contributing to the experiment, everyone's completing their role. A recorder is someone who makes sure that the lab notebook is detailed and complete, and you have all of your data and nothing is being deleted, so that the notebook is complete and accurate. So the recorder is kind of responsible for the notebook and making sure that everything is actually in there. The timekeeper is someone to make sure that you guys work in a productive and timely manner and you guys don't miss any due dates or miss any sort of meetings with me. So your timekeeper is just responsible for keeping track of time. And then the helper is there as a 4th role. So there's going to be groups of 3, and in groups of 3 you won't have a helper, but in groups of 4 you guys will take turns being the helper, which means kind of helping assist other roles to make sure that they complete their part of the lab. So your helper here is just kind of playing the field and making sure everyone else is getting their role done. And if someone else, if the recorder needs help with the lab notebook, the helper will help them. I want you guys to, as the semester goes on, kind of switch between these roles. So if you're leader one week, I want you to be recorder the next, and then timekeeper, and kind of round robin through these different roles, making sure everyone has a chance to complete that role. Your participation points are going to be based off of whether or not you performed that role adequately. So I'm not saying you have to be the best leader in the world to get full participation points, but if you're taking the role as leader and you don't take any actions that show that you're trying to be a leader, then you might lose some participation points for that week. Really, it's not hard to have all of the participation points. You just need to make sure that you're demonstrating actively participating in that role. Your lab notebooks, again, it's going to be a Google Doc that you're going to add to each week. So you're going to have one document that access your and your group's lab notebook throughout the entire semester. Your lab notebook is going to have full and complete notes of your experiment. You're going to have your data represented clearly and visually and completely. And you're going to have some sort of conclusion statement that's important to kind of summarize everything you did. You're also going to use your lab notebook to make sure all of the questions that are asked during lab are answered, and anything else that I sort of ask you guys to do. I'll be very specific with your lab notebooks on what I want to see and what I'll be specifically grading. And there will be a general rubric for this posted on Blackboard in the assignment files. Your conclusion statements are just going to be like a one-ish page, a little bit less than 1 page if you, for some of the shorter experiments. It's just going to be a 1-page write-out of what you guys learned and why you guys think it's important, basically. Final presentation is just going to be week 12 and 13. You guys are doing your own experiment of your own design and coming up with some final conclusion, creating a video and posting it on YouTube, describing the process and the conclusion. And you're going to be doing this as a group, meaning that everyone in your group has to be part of this video. So that's syllabus, and it's a weird overview, and I think things might start making more sense as we go through the semester. So if some of this stuff is kind of sounds weird, that's okay. It'll make more sense as we actually start doing work in this class. If you guys have any questions regarding something in the, someone in chat. So is there a particular format on how we should take our notes and our conclusion statements? I'll get to your notebooks in a second on how it's best to format a notebook, but it is largely up to you and your group to make sure that your notebook just has all of the important information and makes sense to you. Everyone takes notes and notebooks a little bit differently. So it's, everyone's notebook is going to be, every group's notebook is going to be a little bit different as far as format goes. You just need to make sure everything is there and it makes sense. And I'll get to notebooks when I get to talking about Google Docs. So just hold off on that question for a second. But if at any time during the semester you guys have a question about what I'm asking you to do, you can absolutely ask me for clarification at any given point, and I'm happy to clarify any of my instructions or directions. So next I want to go to the home page, and the home page is just where you'll start off each time you log into Blackboard, and you'll see an announcement here. Every week I'll be sending you guys out an announcement describing what we're doing in lab that week. During the week, if there's anything important I need to let you guys know, I'll be sending out an announcement that way as well. You guys should get emails with these announcements. If you guys aren't getting emails with these announcements, let me know and I'll try and help you out with that. But the first page, the home page, will have a continual My Announcements section that will always have the most recent announcements on there. And then the real meat of this Blackboard web page is going to be the experiment modules. Right now, there's 2 of them that you can see. You have this week's Introduction to the Lab. And that's just where you guys clicked and you guys found the Zoom link. It also had some pre-lab observations, so stuff I wanted you guys to be aware of that you'll need for this semester. So I asked you guys to read through the syllabus on Blackboard and get to know it. Stuff you'll need for this semester. I want you guys to have a laptop camera and microphone for these Zoom sessions. Using your camera is strongly encouraged, but I understand some of you guys are probably a little bit less comfortable with it at this point. Maybe as we go throughout the semester, though, you guys will become more comfortable, more willing to use the camera on Zoom. When you guys are in breakout sections with your lab group, it's just a little bit nicer to have video feed instead of just staring at 4 empty black boxes. But using a camera is completely optional. A microphone is something that you guys will need because you guys will be conversing with each other. And it's a little bit unwieldy to do that over chat alone. You'll need to use Google Docs and Google Sheets for this class. This is what you're going to use for your lab notebook and for any data taking that you'll need. You guys can use Excel and Word. It's just going to be a lot more difficult to do considering these are group documents. That's why Google Sheets and Google Docs is recommended. It's easier to have something that's saved over the cloud that everyone can edit. Zoom meetings, and I'll include the password from now on. It's always going to be physics with a capital P. But these links, I'll create new links and I'll post those, and that'll hopefully fix this issue because usually when they have this PWD equals all this mess, it automatically puts in the password for you. And then after the Zoom meetings, you're going to see something like this that has links to videos of the past Zoom meetings. I'm putting up the Zoom meetings for each of my sections of this class, and they're all going to be fairly similar. Future weeks, you'll have a little bit different videos depending on what questions might be asked and how various discussions go. This week, all of the Zoom links are pretty similar though. And these will just take you to recordings of the sessions in case you want to go back and look at what just happened. And then it'll end with some sort of assignment or some sort of lab manual or lab notebook submission. So this week you have a test submitting an assignment. I'll get to how you can pick up your groups in like 2 or 3 minutes. So hold off on that question. So test submitting an assignment. This is just going to be an easy assignment. It's an easy at 2 points to get. Every one of you guys are just going to submit a PDF that includes your name, your major, and today's date. And I'm basically putting this out there to make sure everyone can submit a PDF to Blackboard, because all of the assignments that I want you guys to submit this semester, I want you to submit them as PDFs. So this week, your assignment, super easy, super simple. You just test your abilities to submit a PDF to Blackboard. Okay, and then next week, I'm just going to quickly go over what your experiments will look like, because it'll look pretty much the same as your first week's introduction module. You're going to have some objectives, and then you have a pre-lab that I want you guys to go through, Zoom meeting. Afterwards, I'll post recordings, and these are your actual experiment parts. So part 1, 2, and 3 are going to be the actual procedures and methods that you'll be going through for your experiment. And I'll explain more about that next week in Zoom. Okay, so we're up to 20 participants. Hopefully that's most of the class, and that's what I was waiting for before we jumped into how to pick lab groups. I'm letting you guys, I'm gonna let you guys email me if there's someone specifically you want to be in your lab group with, and I'll make sure to pair you guys up. Your lab groups will be 3 or 4. So if there's only one person that you wanna be in a lab group with, I'll put you in a lab group with 2 other randomly selected people. So the selection is going to be random unless you guys want to send me a preference for your particular lab group. Does that make sense? Is that good for everybody? Yep. We title the Google Sheets the same as the Google Docs. That's up to you guys. I'm not actually going to be collecting Google Sheets. I'm only going to be collecting the Google Docs, but I want your Google Docs to have the data from the Google Sheets. And I'll show you how to transfer data in a moment. So groups are going to be random unless you guys want to send me an email specifying your preference for a lab partner. I'm probably making this random, but I am going to try and sort you guys into similar majors. Just so that you guys have something more in common than just being put in a random group. I think mostly everyone in this class is biology majors anyway. A few kines majors and a few chem majors. But I'm going to kind of try and group you guys in with similar majors. But other than that, it's going to be mostly random. Does this sound good to everyone? Yes.
Sounds good.
All right, we got a couple of thumbs up. We got Sarah in the chat saying yes. All right, awesome. So Google Sheets and Google Docs, these are the 2 things I want you guys to be using this semester. We'll start with Google Sheets. And these are both files that you guys can share with your groups as a whole. And you can start a new spreadsheet by just clicking blank, and it'll open up a nice spreadsheet. How many of us are familiar with spreadsheets to some degree?
Not familiar.
Some are familiar, yeah. Okay, that's cool. If you guys aren't familiar, then you'll get a lot of practice this semester with it. And if you guys are ever concerned with how to do something, make sure to email me and I will Okay. If you guys ever have questions about spreadsheets, you can always email me and ask me how to do something. I'm going to go over some basic stuff right now, and next week we'll be going over a little bit more detailed of how to do things. I want to show you guys how to do 3 things in Google Sheets. And the first thing I want you guys to be able to do is put data actually into the Google Sheets. And this is easy. I'm just going to say we're doing some imaginary experiment. And our imaginary experiment is looking at the time it takes something to travel. So I'm going to write out time. And we always want to include units in our data so we know what we're talking about. So we have time and distance, and it doesn't matter what exactly I mean by all of this yet. So I'm just coming up with random data here. And I'm going to say that I'm going to measure every 1 meter, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 meters, and I'm going to come up with random times here. So I'm going to go by every quarter of a second. So every quarter of a second moves a meter. So what this means is important, but I want you guys to be able to make a graph. And to make a graph, it's fairly straightforward. We're just going to left click and select all of the data. We're going to go to insert, and we're going to insert a chart. And it automatically downloads this chart. Now in every chart, you're going to want to include labels for your x-axis, your y-axis, and a title. Google Sheets automatically assumes we wanted a line chart. We can switch it to a scatter chart if that's what we want, or we can do a bar chart. So it gives you a whole bunch of different options here. This is how you create charts, and you can create different trend lines and stuff like that. And we'll get to that later on. I just want everyone, by the time they come to class next week, to be able to actually create a chart in Google Sheets. You can also use spreadsheets, and this is where spreadsheets become really powerful tools. You can use spreadsheets to create equations and automatically do a lot of computations very quickly. So let's say, for example, I wanted to know what the time, no, let's go with distance divided by time. So I want to know what every one of these distance divided by times are. So I could do this by hand. I could do 1 divided by 0.25 and put that in a column. So 4. I could do 2 divided by 0.5. So again, that would give me 4. I'm realizing I chose very bad data for this. So I could go by hand and do all of that. Or I can use spreadsheets and compute all of this stuff very quickly by just putting in a formula. So to put in a formula in a spreadsheet, and it's the same in Excel as it is in Google Sheets, we just start by pressing equal sign, and then we're going to take the first cell that we want, so B2 divided by A2, and press enter, and it automatically calculates it at 4. So it's really nice, really simple for us to use. And the good thing is, if we want to do a computation of all of these rows, we can just, in this bottom right hand, click that box and drag it down, and it'll calculate all of these. And because of the data I picked, it's all going to be 4. But if these were different data points, it would calculate to different numbers, obviously. So it becomes useful when we have to do repetitive calculations over and over. We can just easily use a spreadsheet. If we wanted to share this spreadsheet with our group, we just name it something. So we're going to name this, I don't know, group spreadsheet. And the third thing I wanted to show you is that with this share button right here in the top right hand corner, you can get a link to copy it and share it with everyone that you want to share it with, or you can share it by email. And this allows everyone to have access to the same spreadsheet and edit the same spreadsheet as they go throughout the experiment. So how do we feel about Google Sheets? Are we all right? Do we have any questions? I know I went through this quickly, but I really do think practice is the best way to get through this. And you guys will have practice doing this next week as well. Got someone in the chats. Seems fine so far. All right, that's awesome. Thank you, Sarah, for responding to me. So spreadsheets, pretty straightforward, pretty easy. Google Docs, also pretty straightforward. It's just like Microsoft Word, and I'm assuming most of you guys have used Word documents before. So we're just going to create a new blank document. And in the syllabus, I'm going to go back to the syllabus. I specified exactly how I want you guys to name your Google Docs for your lab group. So I'm going to copy and paste this, and you're just going to use one of your group members' first and last names for this. That'll make it easier for me to track which groups is which, as long as I have one name. So I'm going to put my name, Martinez, Joseph. I'm going to get rid of this quotation mark. And I actually forgot what section this is. Is it like 9 or 12 or something like that? Section 9? 12. Okay, this is section 12. So I'm going to name it section 12. Awesome. So we have our Google Sheets, and this is going to be our notebook for our group for the entirety of the semester. I'm going to start by introducing you guys to this concept of paragraph formatting or styles formatting. And it's using this styles tool up here, and it lets you have normal text, title, subtitle, heading, and all of this stuff. All of this is important because it helps us organize our document. So let's just say what kind of text we're writing out. So for this first week, we're going to do something like experiment 1, data tools. So this will be the part of the lab notebook for next week. And right now it's just written in normal text, but I'm going to say I want this to be a heading 1. And why this is important, why this helps us organize, is because it creates this running table of contents on the left-hand side. And anytime you click it, it takes you straight to this point. So experiment 1, data tools. And then we can say we have our lab manual, and later on we're going to put experiment 2 right here in this same file. And we're going to go ahead and make this a heading 1 as well. And it separates experiment 2 and experiment 1 nice and conveniently, and we can move back and forth pretty easily. We can use subheadings, or like heading 2 or heading 3, to put different parts of our experiment 1 information. So let's say we want to write down what equipment we used / software. And it creates a subheading on the table of contents. And we just write down here, we'll make a running list. Let's say we used Google Sheets. And under Google Sheets, if you really wanted to, you can include a link. So I'm going to go back to Google Sheets. I'm going to click Share, copy link. And we can include a link to our actual Google Sheets if we wanted to. There we go. So it's just a nice way to have everything accessible in the same Google Docs file. If we wanted a section, for example, of procedures, we can do the same thing, heading 1, procedures. And you'll outline kind of the steps you took to perform this experiment. You guys will maybe want to include a subheading for data. And here's where it becomes useful to have Google Sheets and Google Docs. If we go over to our Google Sheets and we have our data from our distance and time experiment, we can left click and scroll over and select all of this data. We can copy, and we can come over here and we can paste it, and it gives us an option to link to spreadsheet or paste unlinked. If we link to spreadsheet, it's convenient because it gives us a nice table. And if we come back here and we're like, oh, it wasn't 0.75, instead it was 0.5 seconds. So we adjust it over here. We come back to Google Docs and we can update the file, and it updates our table over here automatically to match exactly what's in Google Sheets. So Google Sheets and Google Docs play really nicely together. We could do the same thing. We can do the same thing with graphs. So Under our data, we made this really nice looking graph we can copy. So I'm going to press Control C, come over here, Control V to paste, and link to spreadsheet, and it gives us a nice graph that will also update with the spreadsheet. So make sure all of our data from our spreadsheet and our actual notebook are going to be coherent and matching. At the very end, so we put in our data, we put in our experimental procedures. We're going to also include, say, questions from the lab. And we'll just numerically put them out, 1, answer to 1, answer to Q2. You don't have to rewrite the entire question. You can just put the answers in a formatted numerically way. And then we have our heading 2 for our conclusion statement. And this is just going to be like a page on what I learned / why it's important. So just some of the kind of key takeaways from the actual experiment. So pre-lab information that is included in your experiment, you'll probably want to include that. It's not something I'll be specifically grading, but it is a good thing to include in a notebook. Remember, this notebook is for you, even though I'm grading it. I want you guys to use this to practice good note-taking skills, good note-taking in a lab environment skills. So you probably will want to include pre-lab information in here as well. But this is not a specific section that I will be grading. This is just a section for your benefit. And it's a good, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a good habit to get into, to include these kind of notes in your lab notebooks. So many of you guys are scientists and aspiring scientists. So you should treat these notebooks as practice for your guys' future careers and future studies in other scientific fields. Okay, so are there any questions about Google Docs? Okay, 2 things more about Google Docs. You can share it just like you can Google Sheets by getting a link and posting it somewhere else. It does allow you a couple different sharing options, such as read only and read and edit. Make sure you share it as a read and edit. And it will track who makes what edits. So if you guys do have a lab member that isn't participating quite as much, it'll track how much work they're actually putting into the lab manual itself. It's not just the recorder that creates the document. The recorder of your lab group just make sure that everything's there. Everyone should be contributing to this document. So it does keep track of who is making what edits and how that's all being done. The very last thing I want to go over with Google Docs is including formula and equation in your lab notebook. So let's say, for example, earlier I did in the Google Sheets, I took the distance and I divided by time for the data, right? So let's say I want to type out that equation. Well, I can say, okay, I did the equation, V is equal to distance divided by time. And I could just write it out like that, but it kind of looks messy. It kind of looks, it's kind of hard to read, and sometimes these equations get really crazy where you start adding in times some other variable, acceleration times time, or something weird like that, and these equations get really messy and kind of not pleasing to look at and hard to read. So we could instead use the Google Docs built-in tool that has an equation. So if we go insert equation, it has an equation editor built in, distance divided by time, and it makes your equation look a little bit neater. If you guys wanted to go one step further, you can add on a tool to Google Docs. So if you go to add-ons, you can get add-ons, and two of the add-ons you might want is Hypatia and Math Type. If you're a math major, Math Type is something you guys might at some time in your career come across, but it does have a annual fee associated with it. So it's not a free to use tool. Hypatia is a free to use tool, and we can use this to create equations as well. It loads. Sorry, my computer's a little bit slow. So we can use this to create an equation just like the other equations. So velocity is distance divided by time. You guys will learn that equation at some point in the near future in your lecture. And the benefit of using that tool is that we can resize the equation just like an image. So it makes an image of the equation, whereas this is just a text format. So you'd have to increase the font to increase the size of it. So it's up to you guys how you write your equations. Whatever looks nicest to you, whatever's you're more comfortable using, it's up to you. Any other questions, thoughts, comments, concerns? All right. Yep, we got someone in the chat. Nope, all good so far. Awesome. So this week, your guys' only homework is to make sure you guys, you guys have two things to do before next week. You have the PDF to submit, and I want you guys to make sure you do the pre-lab part of the experiment 1, which includes taking this Google survey. The Google survey entails you putting in some information about yourself, and we're going to use this for the actual lab next week. And it also asks you to measure the temperature of 3 people. So you can make sure to have the measurement of 3 people's body temperatures before you come to class. If you can't do this Google survey, don't worry. We're having all of the students in the physics labs from Physics 1000 to Physics 2500 do these labs. So we will have enough information even if you cannot find 3 people's temperatures to take. But it is helpful if you guys go through it and do that survey. It gives us just a little bit more data to work with. Got someone in chat. Yeah, so it'll kind of follow the activities. So you might want to, so when you do your procedures, you can do procedures for subheading, what would it be, 3? So part 1. And then you can make subheadings for each individual parts going through procedures, data, and questions. Or you can do something like, if that's not something you want to do, you can do procedures for part 1. And then do procedures, data. What else? Procedures, data, questions. And you can do all of that for part 1, and then you can do all of it again for part 2. It's up to you guys how you want to format your lab notebook. It's whatever makes sense to you guys. Again, your lab notebook is going to be different for everyone. And I'm not going to give you specific guidelines on how to exactly do your lab notebook because I want you guys to work with what makes sense to you. Is that good? It is shared with everyone in your group. So next week, as part of the Zoom meeting, I'm going to make sure that I meet with each individual group of 4 students, and we're going to make sure everyone has access to the same Google Docs file, and that I also have access to your guys' Google Docs files. So we'll make sure that everyone has access, and understands how to use the lab notebook more specifically next week when we meet in groups. I'm just trying to introduce you guys to what you're going to need to do throughout the semester for this lab meeting. Before I break and let everyone go on their way and enjoy the rest of their Friday, I want to check, are you guys all familiar with how to create PDF documents of how to create PDF documents? Do you guys want me to go through that? Okay, I'll tell you what. If you guys are comfortable with making PDFs, then you guys can feel free to log off and go on and enjoy the rest of your Friday. If you want me to go over how to do PDFs, then stay on the Zoom meeting, and if anyone's left over, I'll go through it with them. Okay, so making PDF documents, the easiest way to do that, because we're going to be working mostly with Google Docs, we can make a PDF by either saving it as this Google Docs and using a file such as, I'm getting a chat. No problem, Sarah. Enjoy your Friday. So you can use something like doc to PDF. So if you save something as a document, you can convert them to, which one am I looking for? Sorry. Make sure I find the one that I actually like using. Yeah. Okay, so PDF to doc.com is what I usually use for converting files to PDFs if they're in a different file setting. This is a free tool to use online. You just upload your document and it'll convert it to a PDF. If you insert a PDF, it'll convert it to a document. Alternatively, we can just start with our document over here. And if we press print, one of the destinations that you can use is print to PDF. So we can select that. And if we wanted to select a certain number of pages, so let's say we want to use lab 1, which is just pages 1 through 3, I think, yeah. We can select that and we can print and it'll automatically create our PDF document. If you wanted to add in like pictures and stuff like that, it's easiest to add in the pictures to the document and then print that as a PDF. Otherwise, you can come over here to this same PDF to doc.com and you can use combined PDF if you have multiple PDFs you want to combine together to make one file. If you have an image you want to create a PDF, it also has PNG or JPEG to PDF. So there's all sorts of different tools on this set of websites that changes the URL depending on what you're doing. All right, any questions about that? Any comments, any concerns? All right. If you guys have any questions throughout the semester, you can always reach me, and I'll try and fix these Zoom links before next week.
For the group work, we're going to be alternating roles, right?
Yeah, so I don't want you guys to have the same role I don't want you guys to have the same role every single week. I want you guys to try out the different ones. And the reason why is it helps us build up the different skills that you'll need to be successful as a scientist. It helps us just develop your skills to work in a lab environment.
And then in terms of the Google Docs, taking notes. It should be like a quarter of each, or depending on like the amount of work, should be even across the board, right? And if there are any problems, then we bring them to you, or how does that going to work out?
Yeah, I want you guys to split up the work as evenly as possible, and I understand that some weeks that might be a little bit more difficult, depending on what's going on outside of class. I want to see that everyone's contributing to the Google Docs, and if you find that your lab partner isn't pulling their weight, then just let me know, come to me, and I will either rearrange groups or try and contact the person that's not really doing their fair share. I definitely do not want to punish you if you guys have a lab partner that isn't quite pitching in their part.
Yeah, I get that. That was just kind of my question about it.
Yeah, no problem.